Kaminari was considered a player, and Ju weren't interested in relationships. Nevertheless, you two were like two peas in a pod that constantly drove your friends, usually Bakugo, insane. But the blonde's angry lecturing and sweat-induced explosions never stopped your and Denki's antics. You were attached at the hip. It was rare to see one without the other. You tried to recall the moments where he wasn't beside you, but those moments were nothing but a haze clouding your memory. You've known him since the start of middle school, back when he was a timid child who couldn't muster up the courage to talk to anyone, and you were a hormonal mess shamelessly jumping from crush to crush. It was rather ironic, once you entered high school together did Denki obtain a newfound confidence and you develop a growing disinterest in romance. But be that as it may, he was still your dorky marshmallow that still had a habit of stumbling over his words. And you wouldn't change him for the world. Ugh. Kaminari groaned for the third time in the last 15 minutes, making you finally look up from your homework. He was sprawled across your beanbag chair, his face completely smothered in the fabric. You were sure he was going to suffocate himself. When you originally allowed him entrance to your dorm, you were expecting the usual lively distraction from him. Instead, you got a different kind of distraction. A very sulky one. You finally gave in, closing your notebook and pushing your rolling chair towards him. You gave him a soft pat on his head, opening your mouth to speak before he beat you to it. "Why are humans so complicated?" he mumbled against the beanbag. You snorted, retracting your hand before relaxing against your chair. You should have known. Despite Denki's overflowing confidence, it never got him so far as to land an actual date. It was thoroughly disappointing, really. You've known Denki for years, and he had just as much love and affection to give as anyone. "Come on, Pika boy," you coaxed, using one of your many pet names for him as you nudged his leg with your foot. "What's the use of feeling blue, If they can't see you for the soft dork that you are, then they aren't worth your time." "They were really cute, though," he muttered, finally lifting his face to look at you. You playfully cooed at the pout on his lips, making him slap your knee with a short laugh. "Okay, Casanova, why don't we grab a bite to eat then, to ease that pretty little head of yours?" You gave his forehead a light flick before heaving yourself up. You heard him give a delighted hum in agreement as you heard shuffling from behind you, but you paid no mind to it. In the middle of slipping your jacket on, you almost flinched when you saw Denki's arms wrapping around your shoulders. His sweet marshmallow scent engulfed you, and you concluded that you were never going to get used to how warm he was. You relaxed under his touch, lightly leaning back against him with a soft smile. "You know I love you, right?" he said, causing you to laugh under your breath. Your relationship with Denki was far from romantic, and both of you never acknowledged it as such. It was a platonic sort of love. A love between friends who share the same level of comfort. It never branched out into anything else, and both of you were perfectly fine with it. "You okay?" Denki asked, pulling himself away but keeping a hand on your shoulder. You sniffed, clearing the itch in your throat before looking up to him with a smile of reassurance. "Yeah, I love you too, Sparks," you replied, lifting a hand to caress his on your shoulder. You stayed in a blissful silence for a moment, reveling in each other's company like it was your last. You didn't know it then, but those words were going to bear a much heavier weight than you were expecting. "Shut up, dork! You're embarrassing me!" you squealed, shielding your body with a fitting room curtain. "I'd love for us to go on one shopping day without you trying to, so you say, hype me up?" You and Kaminari had separated yourselves from your other classmates to purchase some clothes for Momo's birthday. But you somehow forgot just how much of a riot Denki could be when you asked him to help you choose an outfit. "Damn, listener, look at those curves! Work it, honey, yes!" Those were a few of many vehement callouts from Denki every time you walked out of the fitting room in a new outfit. And this was only your second clothing store of the day. Ah, come on. Judging by that smile on your face, you don't want me to stop, do you? You puffed your cheeks, biting down your growing smile as you looked away from Denki's teasing smirk. Your blazing cheeks gave you away, however, Denki moving in to pinch them. I mean, you may be right, but at least tone it down, will you? You whined. No promises, Denki sang as he ushered you back into the fitting room. Now change it to the one I picked out for you. Drawing the curtain back, you turned to the outfit he chose hanging neatly in front of you. It was your favorite color, a silver band wrapped around the waistline adding a sophisticated accent to the otherwise simple design of the fabric. You were a little hesitant. It appeared to be smaller than the usual size you wore, but the moment you slipped into it, did you realize that Denki knew you better than you gave him credit for. It sat snug and smooth against your skin, erasing your doubt as he gazed in the mirror before you. Wow. Sometime today, maybe? You jolted at Kaminari's voice from the other side of the curtain, thoroughly reminding you that he was still waiting. You moved to pull it back, albeit a little nervous, but when you fully opened the curtain, Denki wasn't in front of you like you were expecting. Denk? You called, taking a step forward to look for him. The blonde only replied once you heard shuffling from your right. You took so long that I managed to find something to wear. You looked over to find the boy in question emerging from the fitting room next to yours. If you were being completely honest with yourself, Denki's clothing of choice was nothing to gawk at. Simple black slacks and a dress shirt in a very similar shade to yours, accompanied by silver patterns weaved into the left side. But something about it being Denki under the shirt just hit you differently. Always saw myself as a gold kind of guy, but silver looks pretty good on me, don't you think? You gave him a breathy smile in response, gaze locked on yours and his reflection in front of you. It made you all warm and fuzzy at how you matched perfectly with Kaminari, and he seemed to think the same. Come here. He pulled you by the waist until you were flush against him, pulling his phone from his pocket and snapping a photo of the two of you. You shouldn't feel so giddy when it came to matching outfits with Denki, considering the fact that you had a collection of photos solely of you and him in matching sweaters, hoodies, and many other articles of clothing. But this felt special to you. After settling and purchasing your clothes, the two of you met the rest of 1A at the food court. The banter and chaos that emitted from your group brought a smile to your face. But what really made your heart swell was the fact that Kaminari was chattering nonstop about your matching outfits. It really wasn't a big deal, but seeing Denki so alive and animated made your cheeks hurt from laughing. You didn't have the heart to stop him. God, you two seriously need to get together already, teased Sero from across the table. You shared a glance with Denki beside you, before the two of you burst into a fit of chuckles. We're just friends, Denki remarked as he rested his head on top of yours. Uh-huh. Friends who say, I love you to each other? Kirishima shot back with a toothy grin. You stuck your tongue out at him. What's wrong with that? Who said love had to be romantic? The four of you continued going back and forth at each other, before another cough escaped you. They all momentarily stopped, looking to you. Denki looked the most concerned, reaching a hand out and resting it on your cheek. Is everything okay? You've been coughing more often as of late. You're not getting sick, are you? Your skin burned under his touch, and you had to catch yourself from leaning into his hand. You gave him a reassuring smile, pulling his hand from your face and giving it a gentle squeeze. I'm fine, Sparks. Don't worry. Sero sighed before slapping a hand on the table. I'm calling it now. It won't be long until one of you develops feelings for the other. This resulted in you giving him a kick under the table. The group continued on for the next while, until Ochako had the impulsive idea of buying bubble tea before you all returned to Heights Alliance. Down for some good boba, you agreed and offered to order for everyone, until Mina suddenly latched onto your arm with a cheeky smile. Just let your boyfriend order for you, she quips, bumping her hip against Denki's, who was, as usual, standing beside you. You were about to correct her when she cut you off. Come on! I was eyeing this one necklace and it reminded me of you. You have to let me buy it for you. As much as you didn't want Mina to waste her money on you, the soft expression on her face made it difficult to deny her. You finally submitted when Momo and Toru were brought into the picture, begrudgingly allowing the three ladies to lead you away from the food court. You turned back to give a curt apology to your blonde-headed friend, but he didn't seem fazed at all. In fact, he wasn't even looking your way. You shouldn't have let them drag you away. You should have stayed. You should have been the one to order those drinks. Maybe then, you could have prevented the stars dancing in Denki's eyes as he lost himself at the sight of a certain barista. You were hunched over the sink on an early morning, breath falling heavy as a lump continued to irritate your throat. Your coughing fits were slowly growing erratic since the day at the mall, and you had no idea as to why. What started as a simple clearing of the throat suddenly turned into you nearly struggling to breathe. Listener? From your coughing, you heard the gentle voice of Momo from the crack of the bathroom door. Is everything alright? You turned to answer her, but immediately turned back to the sink when a sickening lump in your throat caused you to gag. You heard her footsteps rush to you, one of her hands sweeping hair away from your face while the other patted your back. After what felt like an eternity filled with coughs and gags, you finally spit out the lump and swallowed in relief. Momo's words of comfort slowly silenced as her gaze traveled to the sink. Listener? She whispered. You slowly opened your eyes after recollecting yourself, the expression of bewilderment and confusion evident on your features as your eyes landed on the eerie sight before you. Splattered on the sink, painted in your blood, was a cluster of yellow, elongated flower petals. It was near impossible to figure out what kind of flower it was, but it made your stomach churn that what you were choking on had to be flower petals of all things, and it had nothing to do with your quirk. What the hell? You mumbled, wiping away any blood that stained your lips. You chose not to linger on it, turning the water on and washing the petals and blood down the drain, taking your uneasy thoughts along with it. You cleared your throat, relieved that the coughing fits have finally ceased. For now, anyway. You were practically wide awake at this point, so you had no reason to return to your dorm. Instead, you joined Momo in the kitchen as she made the both of you a cup of tea, sharing lighthearted conversations as if the scene in the bathroom never happened. Only when the both of you were silently eating Sato's cookies did Momo mention the strange occurrence. So, what happened in the bathroom? She hesitated. Did that happen to you before? You shook your head without missing a beat, bringing the mug to your lips and taking a curt sip. The warmth of the tea was soothing as you swallowed, easing the irritation in your throat from the petal incident. Momo was silent for a moment, her finger gently tracing the rim of the mug. Listener, can I ask you something? You nodded, allowing her to continue. Do you happen to have feelings for anyone? Again, you shook your head as you responded. I've said this once before, yo Momo. I'm not looking for anything. But just because you aren't looking for anything doesn't mean that you can't develop feelings for a person. I think I would know if I caught feelings. You braced your arms over the table, leaning forward and tilting your head with a flippant smile. What's with a sudden interest in my love life? Before Momo could respond, you heard footsteps thundering down the stairs. Turning the corner was the bright electric head of Denki, who had a smile so wide you might as well have been staring at the sun. You let out a grunt once the blonde threw himself at you, nuzzling the back of your neck and causing you to giggle. Well, good morning to you too, sunshine. What's got you so happy this early in the morning? Guess who's the lucky man that finally landed a date this afternoon? He beamed, catching you completely off guard. What? Something didn't feel right. You sat sprawled on your beanbag chair, your book abandoned on the bedside table and a glass of hardly touched lemonade beside it. There was a nagging feeling in your chest, reaching the tips of your fingers that refused to sit still, drumming against your legs. The bumps on your ceiling were of little to no help in distracting your racing mind, causing you to sit up and cradle your head in your hands. Denki was gone, out on his date with this girl you knew nothing about. The sight of him was burned in your memory, the way his eyes shone against the golden light of the morning sun, bright as the petals you coughed up that morning. You don't think you had seen him so excited for a date before. You were beyond glad that he was finally able to find someone who was willing to give him a chance. But why did it bother you so much? Was it because he never told you that he was interested in someone, and only brought you the news the morning before he was leaving to meet them? You didn't know. What you did know was that you were worried. A certain churning of your stomach brought you out of your dorm into the common room in search of any one of the Baku squad. After asking your other classmates, you heard that Bakugo and Kirishima were training in Gym Gamma, while Mina was out with Sue and Ochako, which resulted in you settling on the raven-haired boy on the 5th floor. Hanta! You swung the tape hero's door open, revealing a caught-off-guard Sero, whose legs were entangled in his hammock and his torso laying uncomfortably on the floor. His unimpressed look didn't hinder you as you helped him up. "I need you to come with me to find Ducky." "Denki?" he asked. "I thought you said he was going on a date." You began to pace around his room, biting your thumb with evident unease. "I know, but something just isn't sitting right with me. I'm worried something might happen to him." Sero snorted, raising a brow in amusement. "Like what? Getting laid?" You smacked him. I'm kidding. Ow." He rubbed his arm where you smacked him, walking up to you and placing a hand on your head to ease you. "I'm sure he's fine. The guy must be over the moon right now. Finally getting a date and all." You still weren't convinced, and Hanta could see it. If you excluded Denki, the person you were closest to in 1A had to be the man before you. Hanta had a knack for reading people, and you might not know it, but he knew you better than you knew yourself sometimes. Sero sighed, his hand slipping from your head as he moved to his closet. "If it'll give you some peace of mind, I'll come with you to find him." You usually felt at ease whenever you entered and felt the cold chill of the mall. But that wasn't the case this time around. You were on a mission to find your blonde-headed best friend, but the thought of potentially crashing his date didn't cross your mind. You just wanted to ease your worry and make sure Denki was okay. You and Hanta crossed the food court, and that was when the man pulled at your arm to stop you. "Told you he would be fine," Sero said, eyes lingering on a certain electric boy from the window of a nearby cafe. "Now why don't we... Whoa, hey, where are you going?" You unintentionally drowned out Hanta's voice as your feet carried you towards the cafe, dodging passersby as you focused on the blonde with the unknown girl. The chime of the doorbell snapped you back to consciousness as you stood at the entry of the cafe, and out of pure curiosity, Denki looked over and... Shit. You really didn't want him to see you in the middle of his date. You didn't want to come off as a clingy best friend. But the surprised and rather confused look on his face meant there was no turning back. "Listener?" he called with wide eyes. "Look who it is!" you chirped, shamelessly walking over to his table. "What are you doing here?" You bit the inside of your cheek, scanning your brain for a good enough excuse, before you felt a hand clutch onto your wrist. Sero towered over you, an easygoing smile as he situated himself by your side. "Listener and I forgot some things for Yamomo's birthday, and we're grabbing drinks while we're at it," he said, coming up with the excuse for both of you. You silently thanked Sero and his level of charisma, and Denki's often dense brain. Denki seemed to believe it, eyeing Sero's hand on your wrist before looking up at you. "Well, I was originally waiting to introduce you, but since the both of you are already here, I'd like you to meet... Her name rolled off his tongue, and you saw the timid smile on her lips when it did so. She seemed promising, you thought, striking a polite conversation with the girl. Soft hair cascaded in waves, porcelain skin, flushed cheeks and doe eyes, topped off with a seemingly gentle heart with an equally kind smile. To you, she was like some fairy tale came alive. "You're free to join us if you want," she offered. You were about to agree, but a quick glance to Denki's uneasy expression made you bite your tongue. The way his eyes lingered on his fidgeting hands on the table made you rethink your thoughts, your selfish desire of rating his date being pushed to the back of your mind. You never got in the way of his previous courting attempts, and there was no way in hell you were going to butt in the moment your best friend finally landed a date. Maybe another time. You weren't sure what the swirling in your stomach was when you witnessed the almost unnoticeable glimmer of relief in Denki's eyes, a small grin of thanks as he looked at you. Satisfaction? Yeah, that's it. After Sero bought drinks for the both of you, you wished Denki and the girl farewell as you exited the cafe. You were in the middle of sipping your smoothie when Sero spoke up. "She seemed nice," he mumbled through a mouthful of his own smoothie before looking down at your hands. "You're squeezing my hand awfully tight there. You okay?" You were so lost in thought that you didn't notice your own hand practically locked on his like a vice grip. Your long-time habit of holding Kaminari's hand in order to ground yourself from your thoughts must have transferred over to Hanta without realizing it. "Yeah, sorry, just thinking is all." You went to let go, but his hold on your hand tightened slightly, causing you to meet his eyes. "Don't worry about it. Don't beat me up for saying this, but it looks like you need it." A small laugh rose in your throat as you took another sip, giving Hanta's hand the occasional squeeze to distract your mind as you continued to walk through the mall. "You know, I'm glad Tank might have found someone. He deserves it." "I get what you mean. Although, this'll be a surprise for everyone else, I think. I mean, we all thought the both of you would end up together." There was a slight stutter in your step when you heard those words, but you nudged his shoulder and snorted. "Shut up. You know Ducky and I are just friends." He responded with nothing but a hum as the both of you focused back on your drinks, enjoying the light music playing across the building, mixing with chatter of passing individuals. You once again got lost in your thoughts. Thoughts of Kaminari and how happy he looked in the golden lights of that cafe. There was something charming about how the pink dusted his cheeks as he smiled at the girl. Timid attraction, instead of the cocky Casanova disposition he would always put on. It was like a side of him that you've never seen before. Yeah, this was what he needed. Someone who could bring out the versions of him that you weren't able to. Those tender moments that he could share with someone he loves. Moments that exceeded those that the both of you shared. Moments that made the heart ache and caused you to nearly choke up. This is good. This is bad. This is fucking bad. You thought that the flower petals would stop after that morning with Momo, but tough fucking luck, kid. That was not the case this time around. Days passed that contained nothing but you suffering in bed, clutching at your chest as you desperately tried to ease the burning of your lungs. Your sheets stained with blood, blankets and pillows ruffled and tossed as you leaned over your garbage can, sounds of gagging and coughing bouncing off your walls. You nearly blacked out the moment you spit out the familiar yellow petals, tasting the middle sting of blood at the tip of your tongue. The petals were getting bigger, and this was the first time you had thrown up full flower buds, which made you sick to your stomach. You recalled what Momo told you when she invited you to her dorm a few days ago. The only word that stuck with you through the whole conversation with her still haunted you. Hanahaki. The disease that you thought was only ever mentioned in fiction. You refused to accept the fact that the reason why you were hacking up flower petals was because of some fictional and frankly absurd disease. You were adamant in explaining to her that you weren't romantically interested in anyone. But now that you had time to yourself to look back on the days prior, every time you suffered revolved around a single individual. Listener? You instantly tensed when you heard the familiar voice of Denki from the other side of your door. It completely slipped your mind that the both of you had planned to hang out in your dorm after nearly a week of barely seeing each other. During that time, Denki and the girl were getting along better than you ever expected. And you were happy. You were. The slightest crack of the door was enough to cause another lump to grow in your throat, the very sight of Denki enough to make your body tremble. Yet, you held yourself together as you allowed him inside, Denki immediately finding his spot on the beanbag chair. "I missed you, Bubs," he said. Your heart stuttered at the rarely used nickname he gave you, and you mentally scolded yourself for acting as such. It felt a little awkward, and you didn't like it. You had known each other for most of your lives. It was unnatural for you to feel tense around him. It all began when Momo's birthday approached. The whole of 1A gathered in one of the fanciest restaurants in the city. You were dressed in the outfit that matched with Denki's, which brought you some semblance of comfort. But Denki, the idiot, had the idea to invite the girl he had been seeing after asking Momo. Of course, your class welcomed her to the group, but you didn't miss the looks of sympathy from your friends. Nonetheless, you stayed by Denki's side, even though his attention was more directed towards the girl sitting on the other side of him. Dressed in a simple white dress, perfect hair, minimal makeup, the look that made your self-esteem plummet. Every part of you wanted to hate her, just to ease the slowly accumulating ache in your chest when you realized that she was the reason, the very foundation of your suffering. But you couldn't. She was an absolute angel, a girl you thought would never exist in real life. And Denki was lucky. No, she was lucky to have Denki. Because damn it, your best friend was the most amazing person in the world, and you wouldn't trade him for anything that was even deemed worthy. So hell yeah, she better feel lucky. Bubs? You looked back to Denki's face. You okay? Forcing a smile to your lips, you nodded as you situated yourself on your bed. Yeah, I miss you too, Kaminari. He practically flinched when his family name slipped past your lips, instead of the multiple pet names that you accumulated throughout the years. But you didn't seem to notice. Kaminari? You said again, moving from your bed to wave a hand in front of his face. Hello? Did you short-circuit on me? In a swift movement, he caught your wrist and you jumped. What's wrong? His demeanor had shifted to one of worry as the grip on your wrist softened, his thumb moving to caress your palm. You never call me that when we're alone. What happened to Sparks? Or Peekaboy? Or Ducky? You hesitated for a moment. What's wrong with that? It is your name, Kami, but I don't like it when you say it, when we're not even in a professional setting. I feel like I did something to upset you. The crestfallen expression was evident on his face, and that made your stomach turn. In a matter to lighten the mood, you flicked his forehead, which made him reel back. I think all those burgers you keep eating are starting to clog the arteries in your brain. You snorted before gingerly running a thumb against his cheek. I'm fine, Sparks. Hearing the affectionate nickname seemed to ease your best friend's worry as he pulled you into him. You tell me if I did something to hurt you, right? He mumbled, his arms taut around you. Your mouth ran dry momentarily. If only he knew of the patches of yellow you threw up and the blood staining your sink. If only he knew the nights where you were fighting the flora in your system just to breathe. At that moment, you wanted to kiss him senseless. To kiss him so hard, the memories would be a simultaneous blend of hazy and vivid. To let him know that even though there were flowers growing in you, he would never do anything to hurt you. But you couldn't bring that burden onto him after he finally found someone he could call his own. Someone that wasn't you. You wordlessly nodded, ignoring the growing discomfort in your lungs. The two of you laid on your beanbag chair, a comfortable silence as you breathed into his shirt. He smelled of cologne, toasted marshmallows, and the smell of just Kaminari. How you wanted to stay in this moment forever, to just be selfish and have Kaminari for yourself, to pretend like it was just the two of you in the world. Denki's hand was nestled on your waist as the other carted through your hair, twisting strands around his finger that nearly lulled you to sleep. You were cuddled into his side once he felt something warm and soft against your forehead. You knew exactly what it was, and it made your heart ache. These were the only moments he kissed you, when he knew you weren't feeling your best and wanted to take matters into his own hands to make sure you were okay. Yet they never branched out from kisses on the forehead and cheeks. And yet it seemed fate had a different decision for the both of you. "You know I love you, right?" he whispered against your skin. The very same words that started your coughing fit what felt like forever ago. You looked up in response, and his expression made you choke. For a moment, you thought he was looking at you the same way he looked at the girl. The gentle upward tug of his lips, eyes decorated with stars and illuminated by the bright tint of his cheeks. A romantic attraction, a chance that he might have felt the same way you did. A chance that he had fallen for you the same way you fell for him all at once. And it hurt, because you knew it was all in your head. Listener? Everything became a blur when you pushed off of him, throwing yourself to your bathroom when a heavy weight pounded at your chest. This was a bad time. This had to be the worst fucking time. It stung worse than any other time he had to throw up. That stupid look on his face gave you too much hope that your heart got overwhelmed as a result. You leaned over the sink, limbs trembling at the feeling of your throat being ripped open. You heard Denki calling you from the crack of the door that you haphazardly closed, but the unbearable pain forced you to focus on hacking up the growing bundle lodged in your throat. You heard the door creak open, and from the tears staining the corner of your eyes, you saw the horrified look on Denki's face as he witnessed the bloodied primroses flutter from your lips to the sink, yellow and red staining white porcelain. Listener. You heard his voice tremble, and your heart shattered right then and there. Denki. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I love you more than a friend. You didn't realize tears began to fall until your best friend had you in his arms. The two of you collapsed on your bathroom floor in a sobbing heap. Listener, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Apologies spilled from his lips as he held you close, your nose pressed into the crook of his neck. The scent of marshmallows invaded your senses when you breathed, allowing you some level of comfort along with the arms of Kaminari wrapped around you. I'm sorry. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. More tears fell as he weakly returned his embrace. You felt his own tears soaking your shirt, but didn't care for them when his warmth enveloped you. I love you so fucking much. You never grew tired of hearing those words flow from his lips. You loved every moment he said them, and every part of you wished he meant it. And you knew that he did too. Every I love you he muttered in that very moment bled with hope, hope that the 8 letters would somehow cease your suffering. But you knew it was too good to be true, that your best friend would return your feelings after all this time. But a part of you, a twisted part of you, was happy you were suffering for him instead of someone else. He was a player, and you weren't interested in relationships. But as fate would have it, you fell in love with your best friend. Fate was also a cruel mistress, choosing for you to suffer through your unreciprocated feelings as you floated in the sea of petals in your own blood. The suffocating burn of your lungs numbed any other emotion in your heart, days and nights merging together in a blur of red, white, and yellow. You didn't necessarily expect to die, or have a part of you die. At this point in time, you weren't sure what the difference was. But what you were sure of was even through the sprouting flowers in your lungs, you realized that he did love you, just not in the way you wanted him to.
And I'd hate to say I love you when it's so hard for me. And I'd hate to say I want you when you make it so clear you don't want me. I never ask you, 'cause deep down I'm certain I know what you'd say. You'd say